The White Room Masterpiece versus the creator of Tomodachi Game. Who is truly smarter? Both are intelligent, complex, cool, and entertaining. People compare them because of their character archetypes. Something similar to Light Yagami, El Laureate from Death Note, Lelouch from Code Geass, or Johann Liebert from Monster. Because of frequent association, it gets to a point where one may want to question which character would actually win in general IQ. Who is smarter? Who is a better manipulator? And who would win if they were put against one another in various circumstances? Let's look at everything and analyze who is actually smarter, then finally settle this so-called Ayanokoji vs Yuuichi debate. Outsmarting, defined as the act of defeating someone through superior wits, is the most broad mental comparison that one can make between two fictional characters, which I'll be doing. As such, we need to establish clear criteria that completely add up to what can be properly defined as an outsmarting matchup, then rely on valid arguments to compare and conclude what character possesses what qualities and why. Such can be done through analysis, as it obviously enhances understanding regarding not just the small details, but the overall framework of the arguments which conclude the baseline of this whole comparison. So these mental categories that cover up sections like intelligence, cognitive functions, and skills can be attributed to a fictional character through arguments usually discussing feats, statements, and further implications to be taken into consideration, such as the narrative standpoint to whatever degree it can be utilized as concrete and decisive. This video will focus on making an analysis between Ayanokoji vs Yuuichi and what most would consider the most reasonable perspective. The winner will be decided on who is more well-rounded overall and would win logically based on the points discussed previously. Since all of this was established, let's find out who is the winner of the Ayanokoji vs Yuuichi debate. Hope you enjoy the video, as this will be a long one. Make sure to subscribe if you like this sort of content. Also, I will be using Ayanokoji Kiyotaka from the Classroom of the Elite light novel, not anime, and Yuichi Katagiri from the manga, not the anime, just to put that out there, so there will be spoilers. The categories we'll be using, they're a bit broad: intelligence, emotional intelligence, strategic ability, manipulation, deception, and inferences. Let's review intelligence, where for the sake of simplicity, we'll use IQ. For that, it should be understood what the intelligence quotient means, or IQ, and how it is measured. Keep in mind that IQ is one quantification done for a single intelligence theory, and does not integrate all intellectual abilities in its measurement, but relies on a compilation of various tests to get a scientifically approved result. For the sake of accuracy, the definition of intelligence quotient, IQ, used in this video is the one in accordance with the G-factor theory. Why G-factor? It is one of the most universally trusted sources when it comes to its proposal of laying out intelligence in theory and measurement, as opposed to other still used counterparts. The reason why this G-factor is considered more accurate nowadays than Gardner's theory, 9 types of intelligence, for example, is because Gardner's theory lies in the belief that various cognitive abilities work separately from each other and there shouldn't be any major correlations, while the G-factor theory states the opposite: all abilities should correlate because there exists a general ability, G. Gardner's theory has been criticized and neglected, as when researchers attempt to measure multiple intelligences, the result is a series of correlated and proportional variables that produce a general factor. This both disproves Gardner and proves the G factor, which we'll use here. As mentioned above, these definitions present different scales, or to what it more accurately tests, and the one of the better ones to use when talking about G factor is Wechsler's scaling of intelligence, or shorter, WAIS, despite some people arguing very fairly that other tests such as the SB5 are better. WAIS 5 presents full-scale IQ as a score derived from administration of selected subtests from the Wechsler's intelligence scales, designed to provide a measure of an individual's overall level of general cognitive and intellectual functioning. It is a summary score derived from an individual's performance on a variety of tasks. These variety of tasks are measured through indexes which together give the general factor. These indexes themselves are measured through their subtests. Each subtest has more importance in the form of how G-loaded they are, but since IQ is so one-sided, there's no use to complicate this any further. The indexes are as follows: WMI, PSI, VSI, FRI, VCI. So let's define them one at a time, then argue why this goes to either Yuuichi or Ayanokoji. One thing I always keep running in the background is Surfshark VPN, because it protects your internet privacy by encrypting all your data. That's especially important when you're in public Wi-Fi cafes, airports, and hotels where your personal information can be way more exposed than people realize. Another big reason I use it is the ability to change my virtual location. Surfshark has 4,500 plus servers in 140 locations, so with one click, I can appear like I'm browsing from anywhere in the world. That means you can unblock geo-restricted content, access different streaming libraries, or switch back to your home country while traveling, so you don't lose access to the apps and websites you normally use. It also hides your IP address, which helps keep your real location and browsing activity private, And Surfshark's clean web feature blocks ads, trackers, and malicious sites so pages load faster and you're not being followed around the internet. Additionally, Surfshark has a strict no-logs policy, meaning they don't track or monitor your online activity. Your data remains private, which I'm sure we all want. If you want to go try it out, go to surfshark.com/event or use code EVENT at checkout to get 4 extra months of Surfshark VPN. There's also a 30-day money-back guarantee so you can test it out completely risk-free. So what are you waiting for? Go check out Surfshark now. WMI, or Working Memory Index, described as shortly as possible, is the ability to take in, retain, and immediately recall small pieces of information inside your head. It works as an entirely separate entity from long-term memory storage, which functions in a different section of the brain and has very important links and correlation to other important indexes. For this index specifically, this is not a close match between the characters in question. While Yuuichi can be roughly measured to possess above average working memory through his performance of some vast mathematical calculation of people's value in money at the intermission between Badmouth Sugoroku or the second game, and Friendship Hide and Seek, Yuuichi genuinely lacked any instance of displaying strong data retaining ability. One shouldn't even expect Yuuichi to be able to, as in his own words, he does not consider himself an intellectual prodigy or a genius, firmly claiming that the likes of Tenji Mikasa or Kei Shinomiya possesses better intelligence than him. His computer-like ability is simply ridiculous. The White Room masterpiece has displayed multiple times inhuman ability to retain information actively in his head, such as when he was willingly recalling large amounts of sensory information stored in his scientifically confirmed perfect memory in extremely fast time frame. As a child, Kiyotaka was able to look back into 7 years of his memories simultaneously, processing everything he recalled from his thoughts at the time, visual and auditory data, while he was actively describing everything to the White Room staff. He also did something similar on multiple occasions when he looked back into his lifetime's worth of memories to confirm whether Sakiyanagi ever had a presence in all of his memories, which were stated to not be missing any. Kiyotaka is pretty much processing millions of visual information in extremely fast time frames, doing it not just through his memory recalling from his perfect memory storage. Aside his ridiculous memory-related abilities, Ayanokoji possesses other notable feats such as being able to effortlessly do a flash mental arithmetic calculation, this being equivalent to the world record of our real-life performances, something which other geniuses way lower than Kiyotaka were able to effortlessly do, like Sakiyanagi. PSI, or Processing Speed Index, measures the speed and accuracy of visual identification, decision-making, and decision implementation. Emphasis is put on all 3 of the mentioned tasks if they can be together, as the more of these a specific feat carries, the more correlated with what CPI is. Cognitive Proficiency Index. Active processing of information via thinking or using cognitive process beyond just retaining information in one's memory is an ideal example of processing speed involving perception, decision-making, plus implementation. This is again hardly a discussion, seeing that processing speed is also part of cognitive proficiency, though what was listed for WMI, Kiyotaka more than already demolishes Yuuichi in it. His ability to process information is just as inhuman as his working memory. Moving on to VCI, or Verbal Comprehension Index. VCI measures the individual's ability to access and apply acquired word knowledge, meaning accessing his vocabulary, expressing himself in a meaningful way, and applying reasoning skills to information presented verbally. It also demonstrates the breadth and depth of knowledge acquired from one's environment, as it measures the retrieval from long-term memory of such information. Kiyotaka far surpasses Yuuichi in VCI as well. Kiyotaka's knowledge far surpasses what a regular human can achieve in a lifetime at just the age of 14. He was educated beyond the normal education limits of the structured academic postgraduate courses in the White Room. Kiyotaka's mastery of academic fields cannot be compared with something as mere as PhDs. What is more scary is the quantity of fields which Kiyotaka has mastery over. As we know, that Advanced Nurturing High School has no limits when it comes to specialization inside its courses, as it was said to possess all fields looking for in Japanese society, considering that it was stated that ever since he had been in the school, Kiyotaka had already studied absolutely everything showcased. This pretty much implies that Kiyotaka was given focus on all academic and cultural courses considered relevant in Japan, meaning his mastery is spread across tens of different subjects, all of the highest possible quality to be studied. What is even crazy about Kiyotaka's knowledge is that it extends beyond this limit. As in Kiyotaka's own admission, he can apply his knowledge to create a false identity or topics of conversation about not just Japanese culture, but the entire world as well. Considering that with his perfect memory, he will always possess this amount of info. Kiyotaka's knowledge extends to the most insane boundaries imaginable for both general information stored, but also word knowledge. Yuuichi, meanwhile, is genuinely lacking in academics, as mentioned, that even Shibe does better than him. The only field Yuuichi has decent amounts of experience in is swindling. In similarities and verbal analogies, Yuuichi has shown associations such as his werewolf game analogy in Prison Game, which he used to control people's expectations of how it will progress, working on a linear association of how the events that unfolded fit the description of the werewolf game. This, however, does not compare to Kiyotaka's feats in similarities, such as his decryption of the Zodiac exam verbal pattern, which was the key to discover all the VIPs inside the exam. Kiyotaka was able to sort through the 12 groups named after the Chinese Zodiac calendar, which is the order of all 159 participants' names, and associate their order inside their group with the order of the Zodiac calendar to match a pattern consistent with the group VIPs. Additionally, his ability to create complex anagrams such as the love letter in Year 2 Volume 7, and Kiyotaka's ability to identify Morse code is showing superior similarities. Additionally, in comparison, aside from Kiyotaka's obviously better environmental knowledge and trained grasping of practical situations through instances such as the VR curriculums inside the White Room, he has a more developed moral conscience than Yuuichi, as shown with his high social awareness and philosophical perspectives. Fluid Reasoning Index can be described as the ability to detect the underlying conceptual relationship among visual objects and use reasoning to identify and apply rules. If I were to explain it as simply as possible, this particular subtest goes into sheer problem solving. Under the aspect of that specific problem, solving to be a novel situation one has to adapt and overcome without relying on past experiences or application of knowledge. Aside that learning ability when presented with new aspects which the brain isn't used to yet, as well as abstract reasoning. All of these mentioned above are very important to understand this index. Kiyotaka's lack of real-life experience helps his cause here, because he spent most of his time in the White Room, especially in generations such as the Fourth, which lacked focus on proper integration into society. Most of the actions inside the Advanced Nurturing High School are extremely novel to him. All of the points established later, such as coming up with strategies and making logical inferences, are part of problem solving. So most of the components of problem solving as a whole will be decided later, which would make it obvious who takes this category as a whole. Despite Yuuichi having a fair bit of novelty himself in the form of the unfamiliarity of the games he is thrown in, he nevertheless is put to compete in the fields he is very strong and experienced with, which is swindling and controlling people. Kiyotaka's ability to conceptualize abstract information from infancy is what makes his abstract thinking so impeccable. At the age of 2, he was already doing inferences beyond what the adults intended and expected of the infants in the Gummy Bear game. Infant Ayanokoji performs preparations to gain upper hands on adults at a time. He did not understand communication fully, understands concepts such as the relevance of information and his identity, and despite not understanding full language, is able to detect an abnormality in the instructor's formulation of a sentence to consider a fully separate possibility in the final inferences in the Gummy Bear rounds in order to minimize the perceived gamble. White Room especially focuses on the formation of abstract reasoning in the children. An example is when Ayanokoji noted how the instructors didn't teach them any techniques to help them improve in their performances in physical ability and academic learning at all. Ayanokoji basically had to notice and develop them himself, such as when he applied it to his swimming practice. At the age of 5, he was already developing strategies to outdo the White Room curriculum himself, as seen in his strategy to protect his experiment on the other subjects by prolonging their stay in the White Room. Kiyotaka's abstract thinking is also greatly depicted in his Advanced Nurturing High School years, through his ability to grasp concepts, loopholes, and how exams will progress instantly upon their description. Examples include Zodiac inferences, forming of his Rumor Strike strategy, and crafting the entire XR strategy, and all the intricacies that go there, from his fake profilings to the manipulation of Ryuin for entire months. Kiyotaka's learning ability can primarily be understood through his insane adaptability to the environment and cognition. His ability to comprehend so much information at such young ages and master so many concepts beyond just academics such as martial arts just shows insane learning ability. Kiyotaka had also shown to be able to instantly pick up skills effortlessly, such as when he was able to ski on his second try putting them on, even executing dangerous maneuvers in order to avoid collisions between experienced skiers. Yuichi's abstract thinking is good, considering that he was able to understand rich concepts in the art of swindling at young ages, as well as mastery in all the Tomodachi games he went through in the manga, with the best examples of Yuichi's abstract reasoning being his building of a strategy in All Bets, his planning in Friendship Killing Game, and his very impressive friendless game strategy, which Yuuichi formed based on understanding the associations of it with past games in various aspects. Overall, Kiyotaka's fluid intelligence shines way more than Yuichi's without even needing to go into detail, because obviously, with all the matters of problem solving. Visual Spatial Index measures the individual's ability to evaluate details and understand and manipulate visual/spatial relationships. Visual spatial skills typically involve the use of recognizing shapes and patterns, and physically or mentally arranging those shapes and patterns into certain orders. Kiyotaka is again just largely more intelligent in this. Yuichi's best feats in spatial visualization and manipulating spatial information are crafting the prison game fake keys by replicating the original he possessed, and more impressively, tampering with a revolver enough to make it jam and explode upon firing. Kiyotaka meanwhile has multiple sets of visualizations of big scale, such as the two happening separately on both islands in Year 1 and Year 2, both of them being in 3D. Kiyotaka was able to project the entire set of information he was able to comprehend about the island data in high detail and construct such a perfectly accurate simulation of its environment. In the second year uninhibited island exam, it was especially important as part of his strategy to maximize his gains in the exam while simultaneously competing with other individuals who had his sights set on him, and were also able to perform detailed terrain simulations such as Takia, Nagamo, or Sakinagi. Kiyotaka's VSI is even more ridiculous in feats such as his perfect memory recall, and the event selection exam chessboard states visualizations which he performed as a necessary measure of his strategy to beat Sakinagi, while outperforming several computers linked into a single engine, which Tsukishiro tasked to predict Kiyotaka's chess moves by computational power alone, which they failed to do. Kiyotaka's high cognitive potency as well as ability to synthesize and reconstruct visual data is inhuman. Overall, Kiyotaka Ayanokoji is easily an extraordinary genius, both shown by his feats and implied by his narrative. He takes full-scale intelligence quotient and any form of intelligence concept from Yuuichi quite easily. Moving on to emotional intelligence. It is a concept that has been booming in popularity in the 21st century, having many uses and mentions in such things such as self-improvement, forming the right mentality for entrepreneurship or business, and many more. The concept has earned a lot of attention, especially from more buzzword or pop culture type usage, like he has low emotional intelligence. But for the science community, it has earned a lot of attention in its research to identify its specific intelligence characteristics as an ability to have, even attempting to quantify those into a quotient, yet to no avail. EI, emotional intelligence, as the name suggests, can be defined as an ability or a skill a person can have, similarly to how intelligence is layered. It has many definitions and interpretations that are used. The main three are called trait EI, mixed EI, and ability EI. While neither model can prove objective superiority or validity over one or the other, unlike with IQ interpretations, one is certainly the best fitting to measure smart characters like Ayanokoji and Yuuichi. That is the ability model, which focuses entirely on understanding emotional intelligence and its characteristics as an objective set of abilities possessed. For its definition, I'll put a screenshot right here. And for the four main categories, here's another screenshot. These are the four main categories used to separate emotional intelligence into different but complementary abilities to serve in outsmarting. We'll go into each one of them. Ayanokoji and Yuuichi are both characters which put their high emotional intelligence to use when outsmarting other people, so let's see who is superior between the two. Emotional perception, the ability to detect and decipher emotions in faces, pictures, voices, including even the ability to identify one's own emotions. Perceiving emotions represents a basic aspect of emotional intelligence, as it makes all other processing of emotional information possible. In the context of emotional perception, when Yuuichi has a focused goal, he can display very potent deciphering of people's emotions, such as the time he was able to immediately profile the likes of Hyakutaro and Chisato during the hide-and-seek game. Seeing through Hyakutaro's behavioral issues such as his lack of composure, him being easily swayed by others, and having a weakness for women, as well as Chisato's attitude of social status in the group based on his interactions with the others. Additionally, through uses of cold reading, Yuuichi is able to detect changes in people's predisposition constantly. In situations such as all bets with Kaido Satone's affection and kindness, Friend Sin trial with Tenji's reluctance to ruin the feelings of the person who loved him, all bets against Kamashiro, and more. Other strong Yuuichi emotional perception examples are when he was able to see through Kimiko's emotional fragility and timid disposition shortly after entering Friendless Game, as well as psychologically profiling Guri Rihito's strive for justice, an inclination to resort to abusive violence for his goals based on the cues Yuuichi himself dropped in order to form his strategy to clear the game. Yuuichi, however, has also some scene limits when it comes to his emotional perception. The most obvious example coming to mind was his inability to see through Kokorogi throughout the entire manga because of her insane acting, even in adverse situations. But other cases involve Umeko Shirasuna, an actress he met at the beginning of the friendship killing game, who tried to deceive Yuuichi and pair up with him, only to just contradict her words shortly after, which is the sole reason Yuuichi was able to see through her intents and get rid of her immediately. The most significant example of a limitation in Yuichi's emotional perception is right at the beginning of the first game, where, while he was able to notice Shibe's expression, he didn't infer correctly that Shibe was only happy that the game was so simple, as someone with a rich dad like his own wouldn't be worrying about this much debt, as indicated by Shibe's later actions trying to use his father's money to cover for the whole price of the trip, not just as part of the debt. Besides that, he was unable to discern if Tenji, Shiho, and Shibe were acting, as he grouped in Tenji, who only acts like he was surprised that Shiho was genuinely surprised at the game's development. While Yuuichi is a clear talent, he is no superhuman, and his biases can sometimes cloud his judgment, even if it is for protecting his friends. Kiyotaka Ayanokoji has ridiculous emotional perception feats, which almost have no limits, from sheer ability to discern emotions in a stone-cold persona just by seeing visual changes in their pupils, and no other sorts of micro-expressions, as seen when perceiving the emotions of the White Room instructor during the card game, to being able to detect micro-expressions of people in the smallest fractions of a second, such as in Year 1 Volume 9, when Nagamo had barely even turned to take a look at Kiyotaka disdainfully from tens of meters away, just for Kiyotaka to infer his entire thought process and feelings of resentment for him, or enough potency to carry out entire conversations just by mind-reading others, as seen in Year 2 Volume 6 with Saki and Nag, where they were able to carry out a full conversation without uttering a single word. Kiyotaka has no visible limits of his perception, as in the end he was able to psychoanalyze and see abnormalities in a talented actress such as Kushida, as early as his first encounters in advanced nurturing high school. Unlike what most people believe, given his persona, which concealed his true thoughts, Ayanokoji easily takes this from a broad description. The feats are simply incomparable. Emotional understanding. This ability is built upon an understanding of the complexity of emotions to comprehend emotional language, and to appreciate complicated relationships among emotion. It is really self-explanatory in the name. Yuichi's application of psychology and understanding of patterns of behavior in people helps him greatly. There are so many examples of this, such as Yuichi's use of Tenji's existent feelings of affection for Hanamiya during Friend's Sin trial, or using Satone's love of her father when his life is in danger to cause cognitive dissonance, or predicting Shiho's entire behavior and important decisions throughout the Friendless game. Yuichi is a master of understanding the human psyche, which he learned through his expertise in swindling and nurturing from Shiba Taizen, whom he eventually came to surpass. Kiyotaka's emotional understanding runs deep in his raw understanding of emotions he managed to build over time, not just using White Room teachings, but his own empathetic experiences. Kiyotaka, ever since childhood, was able to master psychoanalysis to know exactly how to improve cognitive and emotional qualities of people to make them develop through stages they were struggling with. In Advanced Nurturing High School, he's not only mastered this further, as he was able to play a huge role in making Sudo, Suzune, Ryuen, Hirata, Ichinose, and many others grow as individuals through indirectly manipulating them and guiding them into solving their defects. In direct outsmarting, Kiyotaka's raw understanding of not just what and how others think, but their emotions as well, is reflected in his ridiculous foresight, such as anticipating Suzune's exact line of thinking and reactions to the environment around her in Year 2 Volume 7, ever since he gave her the letter through K. In fact, he understood Suzune so well he knew that after Nagamo's fabricated state of rage, she would give Yagami the love letter, as he understood her perspective on romance and general mood in being put in such a situation. Kiyotaka has multiple feats where he's able to psychoanalyze people so well. He predicts entire conversations they have, their separate turmoils, and how to use them based on single interactions he orchestrates and multitasks, such as when using Sakinagi's feelings of affection for him to make her concede into giving up her entire win against Ryuen in the final year exam in Year 2, or when he anticipated and fully shot down Ichika's attempt for revenge at Nagamo for Takiya's expulsion, which was masked by her mental breakdown and feelings of worthlessness, something Kiyotaka was able to fix through a single phrase which he told Nagamo. Another thing to note is that Kiyotaka's understanding, while clinically developed through his own self-made tests and researches for the sake of perfecting himself, is not at all dependent on his learned studies from the White Room, and this applies universally, not just in emotions, given that he did surpass the institution itself and he's leagues ahead. This is best displayed with the end of his class transfer plan in Year 2, where Kiyotaka crafts a 2-possibility, in reality 3-possibility scenario on how Ichinose would respond after he induced a mental breakdown down on her during the end of the year exam. According to the best analytical studies for how a person with Ichinose's personality should act in the given situation, the so-called 99%, she should have been unable to come with her own solution to his proposal due to blinding grief or rage. But instead, Ichinose reached the impossible, the one he strived and planned for from the start, and what his White Room studies would have claimed to not have been possible. Through this instance alone, it shows that Kiyotaka has surpassed what humanity's best has to offer in understanding specific emotional states and neuroscience, and that he can now differentiate particular cases and profiles through sheer analysis and decision making. Overall, while emotional understanding is definitely a comparison to be made at a naked eye between the two, the emotional layers of depth in Kiyotaka's understanding and the utter mastery he has over others to the point of breaking people in single phrases uttered just shows how ridiculous Ayanokoji is at understanding others to the point he takes it over Yuuichi. Emotional engagement, the ability to harness emotions to facilitate various cognitive activities, whether it is their own emotions or another person's emotions, in order to achieve a desired outcome. When thinking and problem solving, emotions often must be considered, and a person skilled at using emotions can typically make decisions based primarily on the emotions or moods of themselves or others. Interpersonal engagement is pretty much largely defined as using already existent emotions of others for problem solving. This is displayed in process similar to emotional manipulation, but not limited to that. A good example of interpersonal engagement is Yuichi's manipulation of the group K's leader, affection, and fear of Hikitaro's safety to make him give up for the sake of saving his friend's career. In Kiyotaka's case, some examples would be using Kei's trauma after inducing it through Manabe as a way to gain full control of her. This passive use of others' existent emotions is highly present in both Kiyotaka and Yuichi's approaches, but the shown dominance by Yuichi in the field of Tomodachi game makes him marginally take this. In terms of intrapersonal ability to use one's own emotion in problem solving, Yuichi's motivation to fix his past mistakes and protect his friends throughout Tomodachi game, and more impressively, his final decision to accept responsibility for his past actions and sacrifice himself to end the Tomodachi game, is certainly impressive and a sign of sheer willpower alongside determination. However, in terms of a quantification for the emotions Yuichi had felt, such as any fear of death for this task, is fully ambiguous, considering an interpretation that Yuichi had fully accepted his death to the point where him using engagement for doing his final plan was something not necessary. Kiyotaka Ayanokoji has a much more concrete usage of emotional quantification for active tasks, and that comes in the persona he used at the beginning of the novel. The Ayanokoji who was able to cry, laugh, smile, and do things he had never done up until that point was reliant on a false actor, which people had come to understand as unreliable. Kiyotaka used this massive self-conscious and semi-independent act as a means to integrate into Advanced Entering High School as he wished, and more so to keep his low profile in the way he wanted to. Proof of this is such as visibly sweating due to self-induced stress when Kushida took his hand to place it on her breast as a means of blackmail. This unique ability of Kiyotaka is enough to place him above Yuichi in not just intrapersonal engagement, but emotional engagement as a whole. Of course, for interpersonal engagement, Yuichi takes this. Emotional management, managing emotions, relates more specifically to someone's ability to regulate emotions in both themselves and others. As the highest level of ability in the ability model, someone with high emotional intelligence would be expected to be able to manipulate the moods of themselves or others, essentially harnessing the mood and managing it to achieve their goals. In terms of interpersonal management, both are characters with insane abilities of emotional inducement, not just through their emotional manipulation, which will be discussed later, but also through their charisma and aura. Yuichi has multiple descriptions of a monster just by his adjusted appearance when he is threatening other people. Kiyotaka, however, takes that to another level, as seen with his ability to completely cripple people through fear inducement just with his eyes alone. Kiyotaka did this against not just Nagamo on the island, where he deliberately transmitted killing intent. Kiyotaka was able to fully make multiple adults momentarily cower in fear and back down just for him to get enough space to converse with Yuki for a seemingly last time. In terms of intrapersonal management of emotions, while both are characters who live through difficult pasts full of tragedy, in terms of managing their own emotions, Kiyotaka far surpasses Katagiri. Ayanokoji's ability to regulate his emotions by his desire is shared not just in his ridiculous composure, which does not break even in the slightest, not even when faced with immense pain, such as everything he had suffered in the White Room, or his injuries in Advanced Entering High School, such as the stab from Hosen, but also through his ability to regulate his emotions freely in his own so-called persona he had used at the beginning of his time in Advanced Entering High School, such as what was mentioned a bit earlier through his ability to even generate tension deliberately for the sake of his act. Yuichi, while also able to withstand immense pain, which has a small emotional connection, also has some cases where his emotion led to him acting impulsive, such as when he responded violently against Shinji, mentioning Yuka's name in their meeting in the zombie game. Overall, in terms of emotional intelligence, Kiyotaka dominates this quality over Yuuichi as well. Now, to strategic ability. Perhaps the broadest big category used in this video. It consists of the character's core approach to outsmarting the other person. It encompasses strategy, which is a scheme made of multiple sets of actions, actively executed which aim towards a certain goal, and then tactics, which is similar to strategy, except they are made of a single set of actions or perhaps just a single action taken. Kiyotaka and Yuuichi had made quite a few strategies throughout their respective series. That is why it would be best to take into account some of their better ones for each category and then generalize who is the more impressive tactician, strategist, and planner. In terms of strategy, one of the more impressive examples coming to mind when thinking about Yuuichi is the all-bet strategy, which happens in 2 phases, where Yuuichi will handle his gamble against Kamishiro and then Satone. The strategy was reliant on Yuuichi exploiting his 0 yen value given to enter the room of the people sold for the game. There he managed to get Kaido's men to sign a contract which allowed him to get a big chance at winning the full game. If he played his cards right, after engineering his strategy to deal with Kamishiro through Kokorogi, Yuuichi then handles Satone and her broken intuition in a gamble where he supposedly loses, just to reveal his hedge bets trick he used through Maria in order to come out on top either way along with how he used the contract. It's an example of Yuichi's better executions, as he adapts to the conditions he is set in to play by the course of events as he builds a way to use his special method or the hedge bets tactic he learned from Taizen. For Kiyotaka, a very popular strategy used to scale him is the X strategy, which takes place throughout multiple months from Year 1 Volume 3, arguably Year 2 Volume 2 as the end of that, and to Year 1 Volume 7. And it's about completely crushing Class C out of the competition by getting Ryuin into a cat and mouse situation against the mastermind in Class D, which won the island exam, the so-called X who controls the false leaders of Class D. Kiyotaka builds from the process of creating Karizawa as a pawn and getting leverage to use on Manabe Shiho of Class C, which he does to record Ryuin's explained strategy to his class in the sports festival in the following volume. This happens as Ryuin is actively searching for clues regarding X's identity from the possible contenders on the cruise ship to the ones possible in the festival. False clues which Kiyotaka crafted from the beginning, which he then uses even more, such as in the chosen race against Manabu Haruhita, in order to misdirect Ryuin to Hirata in such a way where he suspects him the most out of everyone yet can't. Ryuin's strategy in the sports festival was successful, and Haruhita is almost humiliated by him and Kushida until X sends the recording to Ryuin, managing to one-up him again. In Paper Shuffle, as Ryuin keeps searching and being led on by Kiyotaka throughout several deductions as planned, Kushida teams up with him to completely drive Haruhita to expulsion, something which Ayanokoji counters and pushes Ryuin into a corner to the point where he needed to cut Kushida out in order to also save her from her own expulsion. The planted cheat sheet done by X in Kushida's blazer led Ryuin to Karizawa, who was the one to get her old blazer wet in the first place for Kushida to change it. This made Ryuin use Karizawa in order to lure out X into the light for Karizawa's safety. However, this scenario was planned by Ayanokoji since the beginning of the strategy, and he managed to crush Ryuin gang right then and there through witness action from Manabu Haruhita and Chabashira, driving Ryuin to the point of expulsion if he does not comply soon after his crushing defeat. Both of these explanations were extremely simplified, but even so, the winner between these and the reflected better strategist is clearly Kiyotaka, given how his strategy was so well thought ahead of time, complex yet extremely efficient, achieving more beyond the fixed goals of the game given, and being so well shielded from any danger to the point Kiyotaka had always controlled his own pieces of information. Ayanokoji's tactical prowess shines through his very efficiently deployed axe in portions of his major strategies such as X or class transfer. A very obvious example is his fabricated rumor of Ichinose collecting points illegally that he signed off as Ryuin, something which caught the interest of all class leaders and close associates in various forms, which led to Kiyotaka multitasking several short and long-term objectives from one go, such as pushing Sakiyanagi to focus on Ichinose, ruining the form association between Kanzaki and Ryuin from the Zodiac exam, or adding another layer of protection to his contingencies by ruining Ryuin's credibility in regards to his X identity being leaked in private to important year figures. by the time you'll learn of it. An impressive Yuuichi tactic is perhaps his use of the werewolf game association in Prison Game, in order to control the perception of how the game is supposed to end according to the group, something which made manipulating them throughout the game easier. Because of his strong multitasking ability, as well as his sheer impact left when performing his aligned tactics, as seen with the example above, makes Kiyotaka a generally better tactician than Yuuichi. The art of manipulation involves mastering the ability of using others for one's own interests in any context given. Manipulation can be categorized by process of the executed feat in its natural context by taking into account its impact on the victim, such as how they were used. Both Yuuichi and Kiyotaka are masterful manipulators who are able to toy with many people to achieve their goals. By the process, manipulation can happen either through direct contact between the victim and the manipulator, or it can happen indirectly. Direct manipulation is one of Yuichi's strong points, having a multitude of feats throughout the Tomodachi game, which give Yuuichi the high status of a manipulator. From his manipulation of the Group K leader to end their game at the threat of Hyokotoro's fingers being broken, to him baiting Kuroki into his rock, paper, scissors trap, to Yuuichi luring the perverted teacher using an indecent video involving Kuroki so he can blackmail him directly. Katagiri has a multitude of smaller feats which just shows that he is very reliant on direct manipulation for his exploits. There's a similar case with Ayanokoji as well, from baiting Sakinagi into attacking Ichinose Honami by questioning her ability and provoking her to use his leverage, to persuading and threatening Kiriyama into risking his position as vice president by posting the rumors on the school boards through using both logical arguments and psychological attacks, to using flattery and appearing weak and vulnerable to Kushida so he can strike a deal with her into giving him secrets at the price of half his monthly points, which he would only use to expose her and more. Overall, while it is arguable for either way, because of his very good diplomatic skills in the form of negotiation and persuasion, which he uses more often in very sophisticated ways such as against Nagamo and Kanzaki, Kiyotaka marginally takes this more of negotiation and persuasion side. As a side, some more versatility from Ayanokoji, both him and Yuuichi pretty much match in both potency and regular usage of direct means of manipulation, so therefore they kind of equal out. Indirect manipulation is the same case as above. Yuuichi and Ayanokoji are both very potent. Compared to Ayanokoji, however, Yuuichi falls much shorter here due to a multitude of reasons. Katagiri's best sources of competition is his process of manipulating Kamishiro in all bets, manipulating Shiho into Shinji's trap so he can create an escape route for everyone in Friendship Killing Game, luring Guri into a series of bad decisions by abusing his psychic weakness to the point of driving him into his just rampage, and utilizing Ryusei's Tanada's strength against himself, including both his abilities and his initially winning strategy to bust him inside the prison game. Those stand alone are great feats which showcase Yuichi's ability to intimately reinforce his manipulation on others, leading them to act on a series of emotionally influenced decisions. Ayanokoji's indirect manipulation can also follow this similar quality to Yuichi's, as seen with his process on Kushida, which was strategically baited into not only initiating all the conflicts she did against him and Horikita, but her losses already crafted ahead. His indirect influence on Horikita and a larger part of her class into placing them into multiple situations to build experience in various encounters, all for the sake of turning the class into a formidable contender for A, Class A. And perhaps most obviously, his entire construction of Ichinose Honami's mental breakdown over the years to the point of her mentally snapping and coming back stronger than ever, which Kiyotaka then completely finished by himself in Year 2 Volume 12, only to be thrown into another state of his control over her as it currently is happening in Year 3. What makes Kiyotaka's indirect manipulation so strong additionally, however, is its tendency to act on logically constructed clues. This will be better showcased when talking about logical manipulation, but genuinely, Ayanokoji can mix in not just abusing emotional exploits, but also one's logical thinking to form ridiculous traps such as the love letter against Takuya Yagami, where Kiyotaka relied on the latter being a genius and making the correct decision, yet that being the catalyst that ended up completely baiting him by giving him a misguided message in regards to their battle of wits, which turned out to be an immense trap which Yagami was blocked from exiting from all sides through Kiyotaka using individuals such as Nagamo and Ryuen to fully expose him. In that scene, he also had manipulated Ichika to act as resistance during Yagami's berserk as a contingency before the White Room agents arrived. Other examples include the entire process described in the X strategy against Ryuen, Kiyotaka's manipulation of Sakinagi Kusunagi's mental process in order to lead her right into his preferred scenario of class transfer, even utilizing the fact of her inferring part of his intentions to his advantage, and so on. Coming back to said multitude of reason, besides this add-on of logical manipulation being so much better outlined, Kiyotaka deals with way tougher opponents to manipulate, both logically and emotionally, as in either people with way less apparent weaknesses who have to be systematically broken over time using surgically precise methods, and people with advanced processes of thinking which an average person cannot dream of even keeping up with, much less utilizing said thoughts to their advantage. Combined with his foresight and planning, Kiyotaka's indirect manipulation is simply on a different level to that of Yuichi's. Now, let's go over the next big thing. By impact and general usage, manipulation often involves using either emotions or logic. Emotional manipulation affects a person's feelings, while logical manipulation impacts the person's decisions through distorting or misleading their logic. In emotional manipulation, Yuichi is a straight monster. His ability to use people's emotions against themselves or to get what he wants is unparalleled, as seen in many of the past examples of manipulation where emotions were involved. A notable emotional manipulation feat to specify for Yuichi here, which naturally shows how good he is at crafting a field where he can leverage another's emotions, is shown when he manipulated Masakazu Shibe, the Tomodachi Game boss. During the revelation that the child Yuka was pregnant with was in fact his, at the time Yuichi had killed her. Yuichi had awaited for Watori, Masakazu's old friend, to reveal every event which had happened in the past, as he was exposed for sleeping with Yuka himself. As everything was revealed slowly according to his narrative, Yuichi then confessed with an evil smile on his face how he murdered Yuka in cold blood despite her wish being to live, so that she can at least give birth to the baby. None other than Masakazu's child, the woman he loved, utterly making himself as if nothing about him had ever changed, despite his in the face of everyone, but essentially in the face of Masakazu, whose only desire now was to put an end to the monster that is Yuichi, as he did finally shoot him, which allowed Yuichi to end the Tomodachi game on his terms at long last. Overall, the better emotional manipulator is Yuichi Katagiri. Kiyotaka certainly has very potent feats of abusing others' emotions, such as when he manipulated Karizawa into being his pawn, or when he managed to fix a part of Hirata's traumatic past and make him move on from his poor mentality, which caused his recent breakdown. But nonetheless, Yuichi quality and quantity in his usage of emotional manipulation is nothing but amazing. Ayanokoji's best logical manipulation feats are shown in his ability to influence one's entire trail of deductions and control their entire thoughts in the perspective they are put in for as long as multiple months, as it was the case with Ryuen during the X arc. Every premise Ryuen considered for his profiling of the X mastermind was carefully crafted by Ayanokoji to hint at Hirata, but not in any way Ryuen would be able to prove such claim, as there always lingered evidence behind. This took into account projecting Ryuen's reasoning involving Hirata's social status, his strategic position in the class from the perspective of the mastermind at the time, X, his open dynamics with the people X used, and much more. Kiyotaka also has a frequent tendency to guide individuals such as Horikita Suzune into making the specific strategies he desired to win through faintly giving them specific cues and hints at exact times and through understanding said thought process of the person Kiyotaka is using. Such as an example exists in Year 1 Volume 2, where Suzune, when proving Sudo's innocence in the trial, as well as in Paper Shuffle when Ayanokoji manipulates Horikita to make such a brilliant move that it forced Ryuen to cut Kushida off in order to save not only his own skin, but Kushida herself too. That act, involving Ryuen by itself, also was a form of logical manipulation, since he convinced Ryuen that X supposedly understands his strategic mind near perfectly, making Ryuen use his leverage gained through Karizawa and trying to corner X at long last. Yuichi's best logical manipulation, aside simple uses of persuasion and negotiation while putting on an act during games such as Prison Game, is best seen in All Bets through his crafted process to coordinate Kokorogi in her false state of brainwashing made by Kamishiro, just as Yuichi plans through their gamble. From baiting Kamishiro to telling Kokorogi his fake strategy to acting as if he was losing the game in the first half through avoiding the Joker every time despite always knowing where it is, to busting Kamishiro in a bet where he is forced to rely on Kokorogi, who Yuichi made Kamishiro think is able to determine it. Yuichi was able to fully destroy Kamishiro by abusing his thought process. Friendless Game also mixed in different processes of logical manipulation involving the other participants and gaining the control of all their passwords through striking several individual deals with them. Overall, not only is Kiyotaka more reliant on logical manipulation, but he also performs it more impressively. By scale, manipulation can also be categorized into mass and individual manipulation. Both Kiyotaka and Yuuichi generally rely more on individual manipulation rather than mass, which they use in rare occasions. If one is to select who is the better mass manipulator between them, it would be Ayanokoji by a close margin, who in critical times was able to control entire class leaderships and turn them against one another through insanely effective tactics such as the rumor mail described above. Koji also has a similar feat involving rumor fabrication in Year 1 Volume 9, which he used to mass manipulate classes into chaos to the point where both internal and external conflicts erupted. With that, he disrupted Sakianagi's strategy in order to save Ichinose. An instance where Kiyotaka has a individual manipulation feat is shown in Year 2 Volume 5, where Ayanokoji was able to successfully expose Kushida and ruin her entire social career through sheer persuasive power and tactically place evidence. Yuichi's mass manipulation is well depicted in the Friendless game later parts, where he persuades the other players to place their votes on Shiho, despite not revealing so directly, and in Prison game, where he was able to control the leadership of the opposing camp, Ryusei Taneda, and counter his majority strategy by indirectly manipulating him into making some important bad decisions. To answer the question of who is the better manipulator overall, while one could say that both are nearly perfect for their settings, Kiyotaka Ayanokoji is generally more versatile in his approaches to manipulation, even if Yuichi is not far behind to the point where giving him the win is not a bad take at all. Deception is understood as one's ability to get people to believe something that is not true. Very smart characters strategically use this to gain advantage over others in mind games. Deception has many forms, from misdirection to fabrication and falsification. These are reliant on processes which involve various tactics of altering an individual's perception of what is true and not true, being done either verbally or non-verbally. Both characters have great deception. Yuichi's bluffing is paralleled, as seen in his process to manipulate Kamishiro and also in Friendless game during his strategy to incriminate Guri, and the latter part of gaining control of their passwords in a manner where his password remained impossible to find out, as no one had it. Meanwhile, Kiyotaka's ability to create fake clues, connect them logically, and construct entire behavioral false profiles as seen in X and his Advanced Entering High School integration shows a very hard counter ability to misdirect others. Ayanokoji's deceit is most impressive in the long-term situations he plans out while foreseeing far into the future, even if he has very well thought of schemes in the short term, such as his island exam strategy in Year 1 Volume 3, where he deceived both Class A and C simultaneously after luring them with the card, then changing the leader soon before the exam. Kiyotaka's childhood feats, such as his deception about his entire modus operandi against not just his father, but the entire White Room itself for many years, also speaks volumes about his capabilities. Yuichi's deception is mostly adapted to the games he is playing, such as when baiting Taneda and Kuroki in Prison game, or when fully deceiving Subaru in Friendship Killing game by faking his elimination through his zombie disguise. An exception to Yuichi's normal use of deceit are his swindler feats in his childhood, along with Taizen, where we know he was fooling many people into organized scams, as we had seen with Masakazu Shibe. All things considered, Ayanokoji performs more impressive feats of deception when taking into account not just the complexity, but also the competition he deals with, such as Ryuen, Nagamo, and Sakianagi, being way smarter characters than the Tomodachi Game average character. Yuichi, however, is still incredibly impressive in the utter dominance he has over the others. Moving on, detective skills involve all qualities used in professional investigations of all sorts, from logical reasoning to well thought out approaches to problem solving in the form of thinking, and field skills as well as analysis and perception. Kiyotaka is much more of a critical thinker than Yuichi. He is constantly rationalizing the most logical solutions to any sort of problem he encounters in his mind, whether very important or trivial. This is further helped by the fact that we get to see most of Kiyotaka's thoughts through him directly narrating it in the COTE light novel. In terms of deductive reasoning, something as early as Kiyotaka inferring the true intent behind the S system and predicting the fall of Class D and them not receiving 100,000 points in the following months already surpasses Yuichi in this type of inference, as in comparison, one of Yuichi's better deductions was him deducing that the valuable black bullets with unique abilities he found wasted on the ground in the zombie game were in fact used on live targets as a test. In terms of inductive reasoning and pattern recognition, once again Yuichi is outclassed because Ayanokoji has direct instances of him solving complex patterns integrated in special exams, such as solving all of the VIP pattern possible methods for the 12 groups in the Zodiac exam. The most impressive impressive of which involved seeing through multiple deliberately placed cues inside the exam rules, and then aligning all individual names of almost the entire year through a specific line, inferences, and observation after the names were rightfully encrypted in the Japanese alphabet, which makes that possible in the first place. In terms of abductive inferences, Yuichi's process of finding out who the Tomodachi Game boss is was oversimplified with the revelations of the last chapters. A very strong Kiyotaka abduction can be seen in Year 2 Volume 5 when he was able to correctly predict the final question of the unanimous vote exam and make preparations for it with the class leadership, typical in abductive structure. Ayanokoji understood the hidden layer in the exam from the clues given, as well as being able to read the teacher's predisposition in regards to the exam, all which lead him to conclude the final question involving expulsion. Aside being much more analytical than Yuuichi, Ayanokoji's sensorial perception and observation far outclasses the latter's as well. From noticing tiny details in specific contexts, such as Ryun's transceiver on the island, to making use of very trivial information he is carefully analyzing around him, such as when he memorized the name of the worker who passed near him in Year 1 Volume 7.5 during the fight scene with Ibiki, to noticing the smallest possibly noticeable mark placed on the Joker card in the fabricated old maid game by Nagamo, to being able to check for the smallest available cameras on the market so he can see whether or not his room is bugged in Year 2 Volume 6. Yuichi's best feat is also composed of seeing through a mark in the All Bets game, one which he made himself. However, overall, it does not compare to Kiyotaka's set of specific observations made. In terms of perception, in other senses, it's the same story, with Ayanokoji having ridiculous feats such as being able to perceive the sound location of a pen crunching on a piece of paper from meters away, since he can't see the child who was doing it due to the distance and the other seats blocking the view. Overall, in terms of inferential ability, Ayanokoji completely would dominate Yuichi with almost no difficulty. Yuichi, Katagiri, and Ayanokoji Kiyotaka have managed to captivate many people for their creative exploits and well-written mind games. Both are high in success in their respective genres and act as the founding pillars of the smart character community. Aside from this video, there are naturally more aspects which could be compared between them, but the point of it is to summarize the most important details which would prove valuable in a confrontation between the two. In general intelligence as established, the generational genius among geniuses, that is Kiyotaka Ayanokoji, is miles ahead of Yuichi, who even if extremely cunning, cannot be considered an intellectual genius by any means. In emotional intelligence, Kiyotaka's near unrealistic perception, understanding, and management well thrives over Yuichi again, Katagiri only taking an interpersonal part of using emotions as means of facilitation. In strategic ability, Kiyotaka's combination of great control and high efficiency does better than Yuichi's flexible execution. In manipulation, both are extremely close. One can easily choose one over the other with no problem. Overall, Kiyotaka's process of manipulation over tougher enemies as well as deeper intricacies is considered slightly better. In deception, Ayanokoji had also won over Yuichi for a reason involving the intelligence of the characters Kiyotaka went up against, but also due to greater versatility. Detective skills were just not close, with Ayanokoji performing way better in all subcategories given. Overall, despite Yuichi's status as a contender against Ayanokoji Kiyotaka, he is nowhere close to surpassing him in sheer outscaling of ability. Ayanokoji is just far too smart for him and too strong. His methods would work on Yuichi way better than Yuichi's approaches would affect Ayanokoji. If we were to take these respective characters into their verses to see which would do better, the winner is again easy to spot. Inside Classroom of the Elite, in Ayanokoji's position, Yuichi would fare well for a while until the most difficult special exams, where some of his qualities, lacking, would come to bite him. Yuichi would struggle much more against Ryun than Ayanokoji ever did, and due to the nature of the exams themselves, he would mostly find himself on the losing side throughout most of the special exams in Year 1. In Year 2, Yuichi's lack of not just physical ability, but also logical reasoning would lead to his expulsion by the White Room enforcers rather easily even before the Big Island exam. Overall, no matter what, being put in Ayanokoji's positions, Yuichi would find himself immensely struggling. Inside the Tomodachi game, in Yuichi's position, the story of Ayanokoji is different. Through sheer outscaling of abilities, Kiyotaka would easily adapt and clear all the games which Tomodachi game has from the first game, Kokoroki-san to the final one with Friendless Game. More impressively, due to his physical abilities and insane planning, he would perform exceptionally well in some games to the point where he would do better than Yuichi had. Perhaps the biggest difference between Kiyotaka and Yuichi lies in their success in between the games in regards to the plotline of Tomodachi game itself. Unlike Yuichi, Ayanokoji would infer that Kokorogi is a traitor through logical basis from clues present as early as Fake Tomodachi Game and Fran Sin trial, such as her timing of her disappearance and the details Kuroki would share about the job given to him and by who exactly. This means that he would be able to connect the dots on Kokorogi's plan fully, avoid being deceived by her in all bets, as well as avoid the disaster on the zombie game island. Pretty much with Ayanokoji reaching Friendless in a superior position to Yuichi and perform better overall, as he would have all the preparations ready to crush Tomodachi Game and expose the truth. Ayanokoji is not just extremely cunning and aggressive enough for Tomodachi Game, but also very contingent on concrete reasoning for his actions. Though if Ayanokoji was put in the situation that Yuuichi was in at the final part of Tomodachi Game, would he be able to pull the trigger? Would he do that? Would he commit? We'll have to see. I would like to see in the comments, so let me know. In many other general situations, the result stays the same, with Yuuichi only being able to match Ayanokoji in very specific games where his skill set is most rewarded. In 90% of the situations one can imagine, Ayanokoji, through his sheer abilities and large gap in logical reasoning, emotional intelligence, strategy, and more, will utterly dominate. So for that reason, here is why Ayanokoji Kiyotaka versus Yuuichi Katagiri is not a close debate at all, and not a debate. This video has been in the works since 2022 with my boy Dax. You'll see in the pinned comment right there. And really, I know people will say, oh, this is a long video, why don't you just say the answer? Well, people want reasoning and all that stuff, so. Plus, I think it'd be cool to, you know, do a full-scale matchup between the two, and really logically deduce which one would actually win in categories in even situations. And for anyone sticking by, a couple announcements. I'm going to be making a Yuuichi big video and a Ayanokoji video, but it's not going to be as big as Yuuichi, whatever. So that's it for me today. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.